And time once again for the Kaufman Corner podcast with you as always, the good doctor, Dr. Rany Jazayerli, one of the co-founders of Baseball Prospectus. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHP. We're going to break down the Matt Strahm trade. Royals needed a lefty, so they went back to the past to get their future left-hander. Is what they did. Why did this deal come down? How do we like it? What's the home run move still left for the Royals? Do they even have any money to spend? Does not moving a starting pitcher mean that maybe they don't have confidence in a guy like Chris Bubich, right? Like no one else does. They're worried about the injury. Projecting the opening day 26-man roster, we'll even talk about after today, at least as we do this live. Remember, if you're catching us via the podcast, you can be a part of the stream. We do it usually Sundays at 9. Randy traveling yesterday, so we moved to a Monday. Sometimes we're on Monday at 9, like we are tonight. You can, as we discussed right here, today's announcement that the Chiefs are going to Kansas. What does this mean for the Royals? We'll talk about that. It's coming up here on the Kaufman Corner podcast.
You're listening to the Kaufman Corner podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Royals, breaking down the Royals like no one else can. Kaufman Corner is hosted by Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro. Rany is a co-founder of Baseball Prospectus, author of Rany on the Royals, and a former columnist for Grantland, The Ringer, and The Athletic. Soren is the award-winning afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Kaufman Corner is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. And now, here are your hosts, Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro.
And thank you very much, Curtis, off and running here on the Kaufman Corner podcast. How about it, Randy? The Royals go back in time to get Matt Strahm back in a Royals uniform, a guy that we were all giddy and excited about when he first came up with the Royals, and then was the main piece of a deal that locked up and cinched another division title for the Kansas City Royals in 2017. At least that was the plan. Brandon Maurer.
Don't bring up these names. These are not good memories.
Ryan.
Yep.
Buxton.
Oh, good guess. No, Ryan Buxton.
Ryan
Buxton was a Royals pitcher 20 plus years ago. But
Ryan Buxton and Trevor Cahill.
Correct.
And Estuary Ruiz went with Matt Strahm.
That is
the deal. I think there was a third piece, but I think it was kind of inconsequential.
Oh, they threw in Travis Wood in cash. It was just a contract the Royals had on the books that they needed to get rid of. So we'll get to the actual pluses and minuses of the trade itself, but bringing back Matt Strahm, there definitely was an element of exorcism involved in the deal, in cleansing the Royals of the history of that trade, because for those of you who don't recall, this was, I believe, 2017.
2017 was their last
gasp right at the trade deadline, and they didn't go all in, but they needed some bullpen pieces, and they decided to cash in, this 21st round draft pick, this funky lefty they had found out of community college in Chinook, Kansas, I believe, and made this big trade to get Brandon Maurer and Ryan Buxton, who I think at the time was an excellent reliever for the Padres, and it went very sideways very quickly. And the guys they traded for did not help them at all in their push for the playoffs. But more than that, the two guys they gave up. So Estuary Ruiz, I think, was hitting like over 400 in rookie ball at the time of the trade. And for years, I was terrified that he was going to turn into a star player and really make
for about 5 seconds. He looked like it was going to happen with the
Well,
A's.
He had that incredible year in Double-A, and 5 years later,
even with the A's, he came up and stole a bunch of bases.
His 1 year as a regular in the major leagues, he led the American League in steals. He stole 67 bases in his one full season in the major leagues, but he just didn't hit. And despite being the American League stolen base leader, he was a terrible defensive center fielder and lost his job the next year. He was actually in the Dodgers system this past year. He's only 26 and had a monster year in AAA. He'll probably bounce around the major leagues for years to come. But ultimately, the Royals were they made the right decision to let him go. But Matt Strahm, on the other hand, who was just this funky lefty with this funky delivery, has just been, a consistently good reliever in the major leagues now for, close to a decade. And the one saving grace, I mean, here's the thing. Most of the time when the Royals make a trade this bad, I get annoyed at the Royals. In this case, I was actually, to this day, I'm still a little bit annoyed with the Padres because I can't prove that they knew that they were giving up damaged goods, but the guys that the Royals got were not 100% healthy. They had injury issues soon after the trade was made. And look, AJ Preller has been the general manager in San Diego for closing in on 15 years now, and he has a reputation, a well-earned reputation of definitely pushing the rules to the limit. And I'm not saying he knew that he was dealing damaged goods. I'm just saying it wouldn't have surprised me if he knew. So I've kind of always been a little bit annoyed with him for that trade. And actually, I feel like the Royals may have exercised some of the demons of that trade when they traded Freddie Fermin to the Padres this summer for Ryan Berger and Stephen Kolek. If it turns out that the Royals got a slam dunk deal there. Although, of course, Ryan Berger now has ended his season with a strained forearm, so maybe those injury concerns continue. Yeah. But Matt Strahm has been, he's actually had his best seasons after leaving San Diego. He signed a free agent deal with the Phillies 3 years ago. It's not often you see a 3-year contract for a reliever that goes this well, but he was fantastic for each of those 3 seasons. He had a club option for the 4th year, which is why the Royals are, getting him for 1 year. He is the only reliever in all of baseball to have 2 wins above replacement by Baseball Reference each of the last 3 years. A 2-win season from a reliever is a pretty impressive feat, but to do it 3 years in a row is very difficult. He's done that. I mean, he has been excellent. Will he continue to be excellent at 34? I don't know, but I think he absolutely makes the 2026 Royals a better team.
By the way, real quick sidebar to when you were talking about what the trade was. What is significant about one piece of the trade, Brandon Maurer? How is he noteworthy in Royals?
In Royals history? I mean, aside from being like terrible.
Brandon Maurer came over that year that they acquired him for the Royals. He had an 8.1 ERA, 20 innings, 34 hits, 18 runs allowed in 20 innings, 11 walks, and 21 Ks. He would follow it up the next year, which was the year that was notable. I don't want to call it historic. That'd be overstating it. Where he had 31 1/3, 42 hits, 29 runs, 27 earned, 25 walks, 31 Ks, 7.76 ERA. What is notable about Brandon Maurer? They got him, by the way, for the Padres at the time. He had been pitching poorly, but was supposed to be on his way back to getting back to where he was. You know what? You remember what's
so his 2018 season? I mean, aside from
going into it, the off season leading into his 2018 season, what was notable about Brandon Maurer?
Going into it,
he did something no other Royal had done in the Dayton Moore era.
Oh boy!
And I think ended up being the only Royal in the Dayton Moore era.
I guess I'm blacking this out because I've blacked out the entire.
He's the only Royal to go to arbitration with Dayton Moore.
Oh,
coming off a year where he had an 8.1 ERA and 20 innings for the Royals after being acquired in a trade, he went to arbitration.
So he led the Royals in one thing. He led the Royals in chutzpah. I mean, that takes some balls to be like, I'm coming off an 8.10 ERA, and I'm going to let an arbitrator decide my salary because I don't like your offer.
And I believe he lost, shockingly, his arbitration. And in 2018, he made $2.95 million after pitching so poorly for 1.9. He's like, no, we're not settling halfway here.
So the fact that he got 2.95 and lost means he was asking for quite a bit more than 2.95. Again, led the team in chutzpah because like 2.95 million after that's kind of a season Yeah, I don't normally say that like players should be happy with what they make. The market determines what they make, but you should be happy with making 2.95 million after a season like that.
Do you remember when Matt Strahm was coming up? Was he coming up as a starter? I know they threw him out of the bullpen immediately, but he was coming up as a starter, wasn't he?
I think he did. He started and relieved in the minors, but in his last season in Double-A with the Royals, he was mostly a starter. I
Yeah.
think he started like 18, made 18 starts that year. But remember, he actually came up and pitched in 2016 with the Royals.
Well, that's when he was lights out.
And he was lights out, exactly. So like they moved him pretty quick. And then he was struggling a little bit in 2017. That's why they felt maybe he's expendable.
I just want to be clear. He had a 1.23 ERA in 2016 in 22 innings only, but he had a fielding independent pitching of 2.06, 22 innings, 30 strikeouts. I mean, he was a power lefty, and I believe he had already gone under the knife for Tommy John when they traded him, right? So
I believe he had that early in his career. But like, a lot of guys, as soon as he moved to the bullpen, everything started to play up. But what's interesting with him is like the progression he has made throughout his career. I mean, you look at his stuff now and you're like, how is this guy so consistently good? He doesn't have elite velocity. Right? His fastball velocity this past year is between 92 and 93. It's actually dropped mile. I think it was like as high as 94 a couple years ago. But if you look at the movement profile of his pitches, it's really, really interesting because his four-seam fastball, like we talk about the Royals, they love to get those four-seamers that go up in the zone. His goes up in the zone a little bit, but what it does more than that is it has, I believe, what they call fade, which is that it moves arm side. So he's a lefty, so his fastball will move if you're a right-handed hitter, it moves away from you a lot more than the average four-seamer, which is relevant because for his career, he has actually been more effective against right-handed hitters than left-handed hitters, which is unusual, but you do see sometimes with pitchers. The last 2 years, especially, it's actually been a very extreme platoon split. Like he has held right-handed hitters like to like a 500 OPS, under 500, I think, last year. So this is not, even though he has a low arm angle, his arm angle is only 31 degrees. Like he's not quite a sidearmer, but he comes from a very like low 3/4 delivery. A lot of those guys have actually higher than normal platoon splits. Like those are the guys you think of are death on lefties because the ball is coming from like, behind their ear and then moving away from them. But he doesn't have that tendency at all. And it's because that fastball moves away from right-handers so much more, as does his sinker. His slider, which is essentially those are the three pitches he throws the most. His slider has pretty normal movement. So if you guess wrong, basically the gap between the movement on his fastball and the movement on his slider, the horizontal movement difference is huge. And I think that is what has made him so effective here for now, going on 3 years. He basically that fastball has always had that natural fade delivery. And I think it's one of those things you don't teach. He naturally has it, but it has kept him effective. And I think is a reason why I'm optimistic that he can remain, if not exactly as effective as he was last year, still a very good reliever.
Let me ask you this. The combination of Angel Zerpa and Jonathan Bolin or Matt Strahm and Nick Mears.
This is exactly what I would say. I was going to bring up, which is for 2026. I don't even think it's a question. You've got the better pair here in Strahm and Mears. If the Royals had traded Nick Mears and Jonathan Bolin and Angel Zerpa for Nick Mears and Matt Strahm, we would say, wow, they're aggressive. They're going all in for 2026. And we could have a debate as to, they probably gave up too much, but like you could actually make an argument for that trade right there. You're giving up 3 years of Angel Zerpa for 1 year of Matt Strahm, but Matt Strahm is clearly the better pitcher. You're giving up a full 6 years of Jonathan Bolin for 2 years of Nick Mears. But again, for 2026, you are improving yourself, which means you're getting Isaac Collins. I don't want to say for free, but like, the gap between those four relievers and Isaac Collins is huge. Like this is a really impressive piece of trading on the part of J.J. Piccolo.
Well, that's the point. Is they got the outfielder, and I think for now, what they gave up was service time, but they're better now. This is a move for now. And I like it because I think if you're going to give up service time, it should always be relievers because they always blow out. Even more than starters,
Yep.
they blow out. So this is them. And I think it's also a statement that they believe in their ability to continue to develop pitching.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Jonathan, like, let's talk about Jonathan Bullen briefly here, because they're giving up potentially 6 years of him. And I mean, you can make the case for the Phillies that, you know, if they didn't have a place for Strahm, if they wanted to cut payroll, like, Jonathan Bullen is a useful arm, and he could be, if not for 6 years, for 3 or 4 years, be a cheap piece of that bullpen. But in Kansas City, like, I'm not even sure, they have so much inventory. I'm not even sure he makes the roster. In fact, I'm pretty sure if everybody's healthy in spring training, he doesn't. Right now, MLB depth charts doesn't even have Steven Cruz or Luinder Avila on the opening day roster, let alone Jonathan Bullen. Like, I would rather have those two guys than Jonathan Bullen on my 40-man roster. Like, he's like 9th or 10th on the Royals depth chart of relievers. So even though he has talent, this is gets back to the whole Dayton Moore quote of, you know, pitching is the currency of baseball. It is the currency of baseball, but if you have an excess of it, because if you have an excess of it, it's easy to trade. Well, but you have to actually trade it.
Well, yes, it's a currency in baseball. You got to spend it at some point.
Exactly. And that's the thing. Dayton, that was what was so infuriating about it, was he make a quote like that and then not actually spend currency, whether it was pitching or anything else, when you had it. Prospects, you know, veterans with value for a contending team when the Royals were losing 95 games. But JJ spends it. He has an excess of arms to the point where a guy like Jonathan Bullen, who has value and a team wants to acquire, was probably on the outside of the roster bubble going into spring training. So yeah, it's okay if you trade 6 years of that guy, because I'm not sure he'd be on the roster for any of those 6 years. Certainly not your first choice. So it, to me, is just it's a really good use of the talent on hand to reshape that talent into, you know, a better team for 2026 without really mortgaging your future at all.
The only scary thing is, like, if Angel Zerpa and Bullen both have stuff, right? And do they suddenly become lights out back end closers? Because I don't think Strahm's going to close, and I don't think Mears is going to close. Right. But I mean, that's the now, like, I won't mind it near as much if Angel Zerpa does, because they got Isaac Collins. But if Jonathan Bullen, I'm willing to say that, like, okay, great, it was never going to happen here. Like, they've had their time with him, and if they could have polished him off, they would have done it, and they clearly couldn't. So this, to me, is a little bit, the Phillies are as much moving on from Matt Strahm because they need to clear some payroll after throwing $30 million at Kyle Schwarber.
Right. Well, and didn't they sign Brad Keller for 2 and 22?
Yes.
Which is kind of hilarious that Brad Keller
yes.
made Matt Strahm available. I mean, that's another way to look at a trade. If you're just trying to get as a rule of thumb, did the Royals do well or not? Look at what they're saying on the other side about the trade. And everything you're hearing from Philadelphia is they traded Matt Strahm in part to cut payroll, which, great. They're basically, you know, the Royals got a player that they didn't have to give a lot of talent for because they were willing to take on the payroll obligation. So good for them that they increased their payroll by $7 million roughly. It's only a 1-year commitment, right? And so I think that gives them still a lot of flexibility. But that their willingness to take on payroll allowed them to get Matt Strahm for less in terms of talent than he might have otherwise gotten. And then the other thing you hear about is that Matt Strahm was kind of annoying people in the Phillies organization by being kind of outspoken and criticizing the organization. It's not exactly clear from reports what he was saying. It's kind of they're very, very general things are being said, but it's being said by reputable reporters. When Jason Starks got his name on a column that says that Matt Strahm was, you know, being, you know, Jason Stark. Yeah, exactly. So that I, you know, I'll take that with a lot of credence that there was something there. But in the same articles, that, like, the players loved him. Like, he was very popular in the bullpen. Like, it's not a question of friction with the players necessarily. He just was outspoken maybe about the way the organization was run. Frankly, I think I'd like to have a couple of Royals players who are, you know, in tune with, you know, the way the roster is constructed, et cetera. So, and it's a 1-year commitment. I don't think a guy's going to wear out his welcome in 1 year. So I just feel like Matt Strahm became available for reasons other than his talent. And that's a good thing, because you've got to acquire a player without having to pay maybe full price for the talent itself.
Yeah, I think that's fair. We want to get into what kind of home run move might still be out there for the Royals. We'll do it after you hear from our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Locally owned and making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Let Gann educate you about the most cost-effective way to solve your parking lot problems. With free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty, Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer and helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Find Gann online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Northland Injury Law, Kansas City's Google 5-star rated personal injury lawyers, serving KC for more than 40 years, voted Kansas City's #1 accident lawyers, helping people with serious injuries from car accidents, work accidents, falls, and other personal injuries. Northland Injury Law doesn't get paid unless they get money for their client. Don't wait, get compensated now. If you have a case, text HURT to 22222. That's HURT to 22222 or call 816-400-HURT. That's 816-400-4878. The choice of a lawyer is an important one and should not be based solely upon advertisements. All right, let's talk about what your home run move would be. We can also throw in there, do they have any money to do it? Right, that's part of the conversation as well. But what would you still think is the home run that they could hit at this point when it comes to their offseason?
So I have I don't want to say it's a home run move, but it's definitely a Hail Mary, like a proposal at least. There's a move that I think the Royals should strongly consider, because I think the home run move in general is just one more bat. The team is one bat away from having what I would consider to be, I don't want to call it a perfect offseason, but like as good an offseason as you could ask for. Right now, of course, they have, and they're at this point now without having traded away a single starting pitcher. Right, which is impressive, but I think doubly so, because they've filled so many of their needs without trading away the resource that we thought they would have to dip into in order to fill those needs. But I think there's one, they need one more bat. So I'm going to throw this out there because I don't think anybody's proposed it. You may have seen the Chicago White Sox recently signed a player from Japan. I'm afraid to pronounce his name, Munetaka Murakami.
Yeah. By the way, 2 for 34, and MLB Trade Rumors projection was 6 for 180 or something.
My understanding is he wasn't getting the offers of that number, so he just said, "I'll take a short-term deal that allows me to be a free agent in 2 years." That's what he's betting on, because he's only 25 years old. He's very young for a free agent. I think he turns 26 soon, but in 2 years, he was the youngest, essentially MLB ready free agent on the market this year. In 2 years, he still will be one of the youngest guys out there. And I think he's betting on himself that if he proves he can hit major league pitching, he might get 6 and 180 in 2 years. But yeah, I mean, that's a heck of a deal for the White Sox because the downside is so limited. I remember the last time they gave a foreign free agent a contract to basically step into the major leagues. It was Jose Abreu, who turned into straight from Cuba, who turned into one of the best, was immediately, I think, rookie of the year and ended up winning an MVP award. I don't think anyone thinks Murakami is quite that good. I mean, Abreu was like the best hitter maybe Cuba had ever produced at that point. But I just think it's interesting. The White Sox do have a history with this, and they're moving this guy to first base. He's been a third baseman in Japan, but nobody thought he could play third base. But one of the domino effects of this signing is that Luis Robert may be more available than he otherwise would have been. So Luis Robert is, we've seen him play for the White Sox here now for, close to 6 years. Speaking of Cuban free agents, he, was signed from Cuba and got, I think, I want to say a $50 million guaranteed contract before he ever made it to the major leagues, and was, excellent from the get-go. I mean, he was second in the Rookie of the Year voting in 2020, won the Gold Glove as a rookie in center field. He had 338 his second year, but had some injuries. And as recently as 2023, he hit 38 dingers and slugged 542. The last 2 years have been disappointing, to the point where he had basically a club option for $20 million for next year. there was some concern that the White Sox might not even pick it up. And they did. It's a 1-year, $20 million contract. I think they have another team option for next year. One of the reasons for that is he was terrible in the first half of the season. He pulled his hamstring, was out for like a month. And then after coming back in like late July, he played for like 6 weeks and was much, much better in the second half of the season. So after returning, he had 293, 349, 459. It's only 37 games. His season ended at the end of August again with a hamstring pull. So you're combining injury concerns with performance concerns. But he's only 28 years old. He can still play center field, or you can play him in left. He's right-handed, which, we've talked about. The Royals need one more right-handed bat. Rob Refsnyder came off the list today. He signed with the Mariners. And while the Royals already signed Lane Thomas, I mean, frankly, Rob Refsnyder and Lane Thomas, I would have been good with that too. That would have been nice to have two platoon guys. But if you're not going to go that route, and you don't want Harrison Bader, and given the money that Harrison Bader seems likely to get, I completely understand. Luis Robert is a really interesting guy. And let's not forget, Michael Massey, who we've talked about may or may not have a role in Kansas City right now, is from Chicago. And they do like their Chicago people around here. The White Sox obviously took a flyer on Nicky Lopez after he washed out of Kansas City and Atlanta. You're not getting Luis Robert for Michael Massey. But could you put Michael Massey into a deal? And the White Sox have a lot of up-and-coming young hitters. Their shortstop, Colson Montgomery, came up in the second half and hit 21 bombs. They moved their rookie shortstop, Chase Meidroth, to second base. But Meidroth is a right-handed hitter with no power and good on base. He would be very good, to have a balance between him and Michael Massey, who's a left-handed hitter with power but low on base. They would make a really good complement together. And then the White Sox, I mean, if you can name three of their starting pitchers, you're better than I am. And I live here, and I can't name like three. Like their rotation, they lost 102 games for a reason. Package Michael Massey and maybe one of your starting pitchers, and see if you can get, or even a pitching, prospect, and see if you can get Luis Robert. If you add him to this outfield, to me, that is the potential home run move. There's some risk involved, but it's a 1-year contract. So if you don't like him, fine, you get rid of him next year. I just think that if the Royals do that right now, I would proclaim them to be the favorites in the American League Central.
Yeah, I don't mind the deal. And I also, anytime somebody's consistently got soft tissue injuries, whenever Ricky needed some time off, can't prove you ain't got the hamstring injury, right? That was kind of his old go-to when he wanted to take a little time off. And I wonder if suddenly playing for a better team would suddenly make Luis Robert.
100%. I'm glad you brought that up, because, of course, the other reason I like the idea is, yes, Luis Robert was terrible, but you know who was terrible in Chicago for like ever? Andrew Vaughn. Mm-hmm. The third pick in the draft, was he? Yeah, the third pick in the 2019 draft, college first base. It's like, this guy's absolutely going to mash in the major leagues. Never mashed in Chicago, to the point where they were ready to release him, and they traded him to Milwaukee in May for, I think, Aaron Savali, just like an arm that the White Sox wanted. He had a 531 OPS at the time of the trade. In Milwaukee after the trade, 869 OPS. He was like, their starting first baseman in the playoffs. He got off of a bad team. He went to a good team whose hitting coach is now in Kansas City, or at least one of them, right? I don't know if we can find any comments that Andrew Vaughn made about Connor Dawson, but like seeing what Andrew Vaughn did in Milwaukee after leaving Chicago, I'm even more intrigued about what Luis Robert could do once he leaves Chicago.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I will go with Byron Buxton as my dream come true. Everyone in Minnesota says, the Twins, they're not selling anymore. They're not selling the team. Therefore, they're not selling players. And everyone who covers the team says, yeah, that's crap. As soon as they get an offer, they'll sell it. Like, don't buy that. And so Byron Buxton, to me, who's played over 100 games, low bar, but played over 100 games while making only $15 million. I think that's the thing that people may not realize, that if you get Byron Buxton, you have 3 years of team control, albeit at ages 32, 33, and 34. But he's only making like $15 million, I think, each of those years. So that's an affordable number. And, with the depth they have now, it's not like, well, we got to have him play 155. Like, you can afford to spot him. They've got some outfield depth now, so you can give him some time off. He doesn't have to play in center field all the time. You can save the legs. I think he's a worthwhile risk now at this point. With the years that are left, the amount of money that he's owed, and I don't know what the Twins would be looking for. But presumably, some starting pitching could get it done, right? Like, if they're going to field a team, they know they got to pitch. And, I think that would be, if you added Byron Buxton to this team, the 100 games that hopefully he plays, and the 100 games that I would target 120, right? I would target. He would never be playing 5 games in a row. Never. There's no reason to, because his legs have proven that they can't hold up. So if you went into it as a team, knowing that that's what you want, because I think the Minnesota Twins have been needing to try to make him a star. So they run him out there every day till he gets hurt again. Like, if you did injury prevention maintenance, I'm thinking you got a better chance to keep him healthy. And he had 35 home runs in like 120 games last year. He is a true star. It's just like, are the Twins going to hold on to him because he's literally the only thing that gets anyone to buy a ticket now? But he would be the total completion of this roster. It would be a roster that you're like, okay, they can go win the division. They can win playoff series.
If my proposal is the home run idea, your proposal is the grand slam idea, because Byron Buxton, my only concern is what's it going to cost? Like, yes, everything you're saying, like, he could be available, because the Twins, there's nothing, and we know this from experience, there's nothing more soul sucking as a fan than to root for a team whose ownership.
What was that you said?
Soul sucking.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Let's be clear. What I said was completely PG.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, but there's nothing more soul sucking as a fan of a sports team than knowing the ownership cares less about winning than you do, or cares not at all about winning, and that has been kind of the case in Minnesota for a long time, to the point where the reports that the Twins were not on sale is like a devastating blow to their fan base, because I think a lot of the fans there have kind of given up on the Twins ever winning anything as long as their current ownership remains in place. So yeah, there could be a scenario where Byron Buxton's available. And everything you said, like, he has been, horribly injury prone throughout his career, but the last 2 years in a row now, he's played over 100 games. They may, a lot of that is because he is DH'd a lot. It's not exactly the Salvador Perez situation. It's more about injury with him than fatigue, but they have started to accept that, yes, he's not going to play 162 games a year in center field. And as a result, they're getting more playing time out of him. And if you're the Royals, the one concern I have with him is his defense is starting to decline quite a bit in center. And that's actually the same way with Lewis Robert. But if you're the Royals, you don't necessarily play him in center field. You could play him in left.
Exactly.
Right? So you turn Byron Buxton into a very good defensive left fielder. I think it's interesting that after years of not stealing bases, because even though he's one of the faster players in baseball, like, you just worry about injury risk, he stole 24 bases last year and that didn't get caught a single time. Like, there's some indicators here, he still has at least some of that speed, but he's learned to manage it a little better. And like I said, I absolutely would not let him
learn to manage it a little bit better. He's 117 of 129 in his career.
But I'm saying more that he's able to manage staying healthy better. Like, he's been like 60. He played. Look at these game played totals: 28, 87, 39, 61, 92, and 85 over a 6-year span. Like, that's, he's been one of the game's all-time great teases of the 21st century, because he's always good, but he's rarely playing.
But I will point out, 92 and 85 is disappointing. But if you got him for 3 years and you got 85, 102, 126 for $15 million, and he hit 70 home runs, which is what he's done the last 3 years, like, for this team, for what you need from him, that would be okay.
I think he'd be a great player. The question basically is, he's going to cost a lot more than like a Lewis Robert. Like, you're not sneaking Byron Buxton off the Twins roster. Even if they say they're going to move him, that one's going to hurt. And yes, you've got some pitching depth that you can form a foundation of a trade, but you're probably trading at least one top 5 prospect in the organization, and maybe 2.
Blake Mitchell.
Well, Blake Mitchell would be a great start. Would you trade Blake Mitchell and David Shields and then Chris Bubich, or something?
I would be more interested in Mitchell and Cameron, and go all in with.
If you can do that, I think then I think but I don't know if Noah Cameron and Blake Mitchell is enough to get it done. That's all.
You probably do have to give another prospect.
Yeah, I just think that if unless the Twins are handle this incredibly poorly and don't let the rest of baseball know that yes, Byron Buxton's on the market. Like if this turns into a Luka Doncic situation, maybe you can sneak him off the Twins roster. But I think if there's an actual formal auction here among other teams for what it's going to take, you're going to have to throw in a third guy.
At $157 million, tapped out on what they can spend.
So what exactly is their payroll right now? Like I'm seeing,
I'm putting it at 157 based upon one of the projections has their guaranteed contracts at 128, their projected arbitration number at basically 26, so that's 154, and another and pre-arb contracts at a little over 4.
So because every place reports it differently, because some people report the 40-man payroll, some people report the 26-man payroll. What I try to do is just whatever source I use, I compare the Royals payroll to what it was in previous years. Basically, you're using the same system. So is it more or less than it was last year? According to the numbers I'm looking at, their current payroll is about $12 million more than last year's opening day payroll, which is fair, right? So it's about 8-9% more after adding Matt Strahm, which is good. On the one hand, okay, they've already upped payroll by about 10%. If they don't add any more to it, I'm not going to be like, oh, they're being cheap. But at the same time, it is, according to the sources I'm looking at, still slightly less than it was in 2017. And I'm sorry, but to me, 2017 should be the floor for the Kansas City Royals. When you take into effect 9 years of inflation, they should be above the 2017 payroll threshold, which means, yeah, I think they could add $15 to $20 million to next year's payroll. It's not unlimited, but I think they could add a player, a Lewis Robert or Byron Buxton caliber salary. We're not talking about 30, 35 million. Although, again, if Bo Bichette wants to sign here, I'm willing to talk, and you can certainly structure the contract so the first year he's not getting quite as much, and you're going to have some money come off the payroll in the next year or two. But Lewis Robert or Byron Buxton, absolutely, they can afford it. Yes.
Yeah. We'll see if they actually go out and get it done. Your optimism. I'm not optimistic that something like that is going to happen.
I'm not. I wouldn't.
And I want to be clear. We called it our home run.
Yes.
We didn't call it likely to happen. So let's be clear about that. We'll talk about what they think about their starting pitching here in a second. The 26-man and some conversation about the Royal Stadium after you hear from our friends at Whataburger.
This isn't just any burger run. This is a burger run for Whataburger Sweet and Spicy Bacon Burger. 2 fresh all-beef patties with melty cheese, grilled onions, crispy bacon, and sweet and spicy pepper sauce. One for you, one for him, and one for your unofficial roommate, Brad. Always order an extra. For Brad. The all-time favorite sweet and spicy bacon burger from Whataburger. Just like you like it.
Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Locally owned and making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Let Gann educate you about the most cost-effective way to solve your parking lot problems. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every project comes with a written warning. Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer and helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Find Gann online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. All right, Rany, how about it? Does the fact that they haven't moved a starting pitcher mean that there's fear about some of these arm injuries, that they think, oh, we really need the depth, we're not going to move the starting pitchers?
I think it absolutely could. It's either that or they're just not getting the value that they feel they deserve for someone like Kris Bubic, right? But obviously Bubic is coming back from an injury, and I'm honestly I don't want to say I'm more concerned necessarily about Ryan Bergert, although I probably am, but I think in terms of the long-term future of the Kansas City Royals right now, Ryan Bergert's more important to this team than Kris Bubic. Kris Bubic is under contract for 1 more year. Ryan Bergert they would have for 5 or 6. And if he has to undergo Tommy John surgery and miss, a year and a half of that, that's going to hurt. Whereas Chris Bubic, I think even if he's not, the concern I have with him is he may not be ready in April. Maybe he's ready in May, or he may come back, but he may not be 100% with the shoulder. But with Ryan Bergert, the concern is he shows up at spring training and we find out he's going under the knife for Tommy John, and his entire season's over. So between those two, that would be the one reason why the Royals don't necessarily have the ability to trade pitching as much as we thought, because you take those two out of the equation and suddenly, Stephen Kolek is basically your sixth starter at that point. Like you've got, Reagans, Waka, Lugo, Noah Cameron. Fine. That's a very strong top four to start with. But then you've got, Kolek and I'm trying to think, who am I forgetting? There's one other pitcher here.
For the rotation?
Yeah, for the rotation.
The starting five right now is Reagans, Waka, Lugo, Bubic, Cameron.
Right, but if Bubic is not healthy, then Bergert would be the first guy up.
Kolek or Bergert would be the next guy.
So I guess it is Kolek might even be the fifth starter. Maybe I'm thinking
Bailey Falter.
Maybe Bailey Falter. And I'll be honest, I'm still curious what the Royals are planning.
Mason Black.
Yeah, I mean, we start getting into that kind of territory. So if one of Bubic and Bergert aren't healthy to start the year, you'll be fine. If both of them are, then you're really that fifth starter spot. I mean, maybe they must really believe in Bailey Falter because they tendered him a contract. I mean, we're at the point now, we're past the deadline to whether or not to tender contracts to guys, and he's not going to be cheap. I mean, he's ARB eligible, I believe, and he's going to make a couple $1 million. It's not going to break the bank, but I don't know if you necessarily, give him, it's going to be probably around $3 million unless you believe he can really contribute. And maybe maybe the fact they've kept him around is also a sign that they feel like they need starting pitcher insurance because of all the guys in the bullpen. He's the one guy I suppose you could move Daniel Lynch back, but I don't think the Royals want to go that route. Whereas Bailey Falter is somebody they actually did put in the rotation when they acquired him. And presumably he would be the next guy up.
Well, I'm not going to say that they officially are worried, but I'm going to say it's just one of those things you go, let's write it down, make a note, put it in a file, and we'll set it to the side and see what happens when we get to spring training.
Right.
So we might go if guys go down, like you said, or head under the knife, like, okay, this is they kind of saw this coming.
Right. We definitely might look back at this and be like, oh, now it makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. All right, what about your opening day 26-man roster? What do you got? Have you compiled it?
So, I still kind of
you can't spend 10 minutes a guy or we're going to be here,
Yeah, no, we're not. I mean, I think, 22 of the spots are kind of spoken for.
The two catchers are set.
We have both catchers. Jonathan India is going to be on the roster in some capacity. We're talking about, even the bench guys like Lane Thomas. We know Lane Thomas will be on the roster, right? If you're looking at 4 bench guys, if you're having 13 hitters on the roster. Right now, if you put Carter Jensen in the lineup, which is what I would do, because I think he's going to be in the lineup more often than not, you would probably have Michael Massey, Lane Thomas, and then 2 players from the Nick Lofton, Tyler Tolbert class of players. But when I look at the roster, the reason why I don't want to say I got a 26-man nailed down is I just don't know where Michael Massey fits. And that's why I brought his name up a couple times as like a trade candidate, because if you move on from him, that opens up a roster spot, presumably for another outfielder, right? And hopefully an impact outfielder. Because with him, I don't know. I don't know what he does exactly. If you're going to play Jonathan India most of the time at second base, you can play him in the outfield, I suppose, but you're going to play him in a corner outfield spot. It's probably going to be left field. How often is he really going to play over Isaac Collins? I'd rather have Isaac Collins have a right-handed bat, like somebody to platoon with him against lefties, rather than Massey, who's not a great fit for the ballpark with the power and low on base. Now, maybe you can't get much for him, and maybe he's just insurance in spring training because he's coming off a bad year, and teams are not likely to give up much for him. Again, I like the idea of turning the White Sox just because I do think that they've expressed interest in him in the past, and he is a local kid. But to me, a 26-man roster right now, I'm inclined to think Michael Massey is not on it come March 28th or whatever the date it is. Whether that's by trade or not, I don't know, but I would bet right now he's not on the roster.
Yeah, I think that's the spot where you go, okay, here that is the one of the 13 position players that you're looking for. I mean, I think that, and the Nick Lofton, Tyler Tolbert. Those are your three guys in there. Like, how do they fit?
Right. I feel like you have to upgrade one of them, and potentially two, but definitely one for sure. I don't think you can go into the season with all three of those guys on your bench.
Bullpen. I've got Estevez, Ursig, Strahm, Mears, Schreiber, Cruz, Lynch, Lang.
So Estevez, Ursig, Strahm, to me, that's a very clear top three right there. And then Schreiber, Mears, and Alex Lang are kind of the middle guys. We know obviously they've acquired Mears and Lang for a reason. I think that they're going to be on there. Who are the other two guys you had?
Cruz and Lynch.
Yes, Cruz and Lynch right now. That would be it. I think Avila is more likely to go back to AAA, but like, what we saw from him in September, I think he's the next man up if anybody gets hurt. The Michael Massey of the pitching staff is Bailey Falter. I don't know where Bailey Falter fits into all of this. And so it's kind of surprising he's still on the roster. Again, they liked him when they acquired him. They thought they could do something with him. He was terrible for like 12 innings. Maybe he wasn't 100% healthy. And pitchers get hurt. So I think there's more of a path for him to be on the opening day roster than Michael Massey. But right now, something needs to change. I don't know what's going on with him. But I guess, it's never a bad thing to have some depth. But I just don't know where Bailey Falter fits.
I've got Tolbert and Lofton making it as the bottom two outfielders. Do you?
At the moment, yes. Darren Blanco is still in the organization. In fact, I think he's still on the 40-man roster, somewhat surprisingly. But right now, I think Lofton, unless they acquire another right-handed bat, the fact that Lofton bats right-handed has shown, at least on base ability in the minor leagues, gives them a leg up. And then from a speed standpoint, I'd rather have Tyler Tolbert than Darren Blanco. So I think Blanco kind of what he does best. Lofton does one thing better than him. Tolbert does one thing better than him. There's no real room for him on the roster right now.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, the stadium. We'll finish with this. Today, the Kansas City Chiefs, at least as we go live here on a Monday night, the Chiefs announcing that they are making the move to Kansas. The Royals are not. This is the time that the Royals were supposed to be announcing. I want to be clear with what the spirit of the Star Bonds were. They opened them up. They gave them a year to get it done. They didn't get it done. They had a 1-year built-in extension, which I'm going to tell you that from people on the Kansas side, it took some effort to get some of the peoples that weren't, from outside of Kansas City that went along with the Star Bonds to lure them over, to get them to agree to writing up the extension. Because of the way it was written, the extension is for a year, but everybody agreed, kind of handshake agreement, that this was an extension to the end of the year. By all accounts, the idea was that the clubs were like, no. We don't need all the way to the end of next June. We need this done by the end of the year. The Chiefs have met that deadline. The Royals have not, right? So that tells you where they are. I can tell you from the work that I've done that there are 3 sites that are still out there. It's the Sprint campus, which is now kind of becoming the Black and Veatch location, which is for people who are familiar with the area. It's just north of where the Sprint campus was at 119th and all. So it gets you closer to 435, but it's on what I would call the same chunk, the same quadrant between College and 119th, between Knoll and Metcalf. It just moves you closer that direction. There would be a land flip. We know that the Royals, members of the Royals ownership have purchased the note and might even be complete in buying out, taking over the note and taking control of the land there where the Sprint campus is. That is one site. There is pushback from the local municipalities. People don't want it there. In those neighborhoods, they don't want it there. Then there is North Kansas City, which is just across the river, would have basically a southeast home to center would be southeast. They've got permission from Major League Baseball to do that. It also would require a halo that would be built, which would help shield fans from rain and sun up there, but it would also help shield the batters so that they didn't have the sun in their eyes. That's part of how they got that cleared. And it would mean that along the third base side, you'd have a view of downtown, third base and left field, outfield, just for people where it is. There's a lot of infrastructure that needs to go in that sewage, power, all the utilities. It's not really run for that. It's for the most part, businesses that would be leaving there. The land is all owned by the Merriman family. The businesses that would be leaving are kind of like house, where trucks come and sit for the night or load up or do that kind of stuff. That's what's there. It's not really plumbed for major, massive amounts of people to be there flushing toilets and, running soda machines and all that kind of stuff. So that's one of the things that it can be done, but it's major. And of course, there's highway issues to how to get everyone off. And then the Washington Square Park, which is down by Crown Center, wedged in between the train station, Union Station, and Crown Center, and that has some issues with the railroads, the trains that do come out of Union Station, and how that would all fit in there. Those are the three locations. It's been kind of hinted to me, like if I read the tea leaves, that Kansas is in the lead. Ownership owns the land, right? Like I think if it had gone the way they wanted to, they'd already be there. They'd be announcing that they're going to Overland Park, and they're not doing it because they've met resistance. So here we sit, the Royals coming by what is not a hard deadline, but certainly a good Samaritan deadline, and they're going to go right by it without an answer. And I think when you go right by this, I think the adage, Rany, it takes a deal that, everyone needs a deadline to get a deal done. Like there's a reason why you have a trade deadline. Otherwise, you'll milk it. You'll wait. Well, let me see. They're going to go by this on the end of the year. And then what is the incentive for the Royals to get anything done before the actual letter of the law, which is the end of June, comes about? Now I think it's 6 more months of waiting, and 2031 is coming. Like it's coming. It will be here before you know it. And the way it's set up with their lease at Kauffman Stadium, it's a 5-year extension. You'd be like, well, we don't need 5 years. We just need 1 or 2. Well, you've got to amend the lease, and you're talking to a county that you're leaving. Like, how much do you think they're going to want to amend the lease and help you? And by the way, there's nothing to be done now that the Chiefs are leaving Arrowhead Stadium. There is nothing in their lease that says they have to tear it down. So you've got right along I-70 stadiums that the weather is just going to take control of for years to come if they don't. And it doesn't cost $500,000 to tear down a stadium, okay? Because there's all kinds of environmental things you have to do. You have to refurbish certain things, and so like it's critical that the Royals get moving here real quick.
They definitely have. I think an opportunity has presented itself today in the form of, the Chiefs and making this announcement. Mm-hmm. Looking at this from, an outsider's perspective, the most interesting thing to me is simply how much leverage does this give the Royals over Kansas City, Missouri, in the sense that, like, the mayor, people have been digging up the tweet that Mayor Quentin Lucas put out, I think from a year ago, basically reassuring everybody the Royals are staying in Kansas City, Missouri. The Chiefs are staying in Kansas City, Missouri. This notion that the Chiefs were using Kansas, the state of Kansas, as leverage all along, up until the exact moment that they weren't, and they're actually moving to Kansas. To me, just from a political standpoint, the potential, egg on the face of politicians in Kansas City if both teams leave the city proper. It seems to me like the Royals have leverage today that they didn't necessarily have yesterday, if they're shrewd enough to use it. I'm not arguing about the morality of this or whether, the people should be paying for ballparks for billionaires, et cetera. That ship has sailed, for better or for worse. I don't necessarily like it, but I don't know how you eliminate the idea of the public paying for these huge stadiums short of federal legislation to just ban it across the country, because there's always going to be, if you don't ban it on a global scale, there's always going to be the temptation for one municipality to lure a team to their area using the money. So if given that stuff happens, the Royals can use the leverage of leaving Kansas City, Missouri completely free of both teams as a way to extract more concessions, get the best possible deal to stay. Now, you mentioned the Jackson Square Park area. Is that in Kansas City proper?
Wait, I need to say that again.
The Jackson Square Park location.
Washington Square Park.
That's right, Washington. You said Jackson.
I screwed it up. That is in Jackson County. That's downtown, considered downtown Kansas City.
Right. That's the one of the three locations, because the North Kansas City is technically a different municipality entirely, correct?
Yes.
Right.
Different county, different city,
right.
Same state. And the Governor Keogh has, by all accounts, the Chiefs even said this today, worked very, very hard and brought a lot of money to the table from the state of Missouri to try to keep these teams. I'm with you. I mean, I think you hit upon what it is. Like, I think the dynamics right now are you've got an ownership group that owns that land, and I've been told that they've overpaid for that land. in assuming the debt for it and then taking it over, that it's only worth what they paid for it if they use star bonds to put a stadium on it and develop it that way. Otherwise, just trying to develop it as, commercial, as office space, like they're not going to get their money back. But if it was $100 million flanker to get a $2+ billion stadium done someplace else, well, then it's the cost of doing business. It's
money talks.
Yeah,
money talks, and
they will eventually. Owning land is, it is absolutely the sign of real wealth in this country. Like you can think it's stuff, but owning the land, because eventually everybody needs it and it only goes up. And so I don't fret as much as some people do about how much they paid for it. That means they have to put it right there. I don't think that's the case, but I think feelings were hurt on the vote. I mean, I know I've heard that there's some folks within the Royals that were not happy with how Jackson County handled the vote and didn't think they had the support that they wanted. But I'm with you. Like eventually you got to find the best deal for this team, and you need to do it fast. And you need to not half-ass it, because like John Sherman said, this takes time, and it should take time because it's a generational thing. I agree. But at some point you got to go. I mean, it's been years. It has taken time. You have had time. And I'll go back to what I said. They don't have anybody in there, that seems to be making the decisions that has experience with these kind of real estate deals. And they started slow by announcing that they're going to stay in Jackson County. They took away their leverage to begin with the first couple of years. And when they went on the ballot the first time, I'm going to tell you that the Chiefs never said they were going to Kansas. They said, here we go. But I told everybody, if you want, I don't like this plan, but what you want is to keep the Royals and Chiefs in Jackson County, you absolutely need to go out and vote yes on this. Because I'm telling you, the moment it's done, Kansas will be coming after both those teams. And
I mean, I think there's a very good reason why the Chiefs, the Chiefs portion of that plan seemed like the most slapdash use of $300 million or whatever it was that we've ever seen. Because I don't think the Chiefs.
I think it was going to be 800 million.
800 million. And it was like nobody knew where that money was going, because I don't think the Chiefs were particularly invested. They're like, either we take this money and we just keep it, or we'll go somewhere else. And they got what they wanted.
Yeah.
Just speaking as a fan of the game, like I'm a baseball fan, sports fan, really in general. Like baseball to me fits really well in an urban core more than football, because there's 81 games a year. You want a facility. If it's going to be in an urban setting, you want a facility that's used as much as possible. Whereas like a big football stadium, it's only being used for special days for special events. To me, that's I don't like the idea of having a significant portion of an urban core that lies fallow 80% of the time or whatever. I mean, a stadium that can fit 65,000 plus people, you're not filling that 200 times a year or 150 times a year. A baseball stadium, you're filling it 81 times a year. Hopefully, 6 to 8 more in the playoffs. You can use it for other things, but if we end up with a scenario where the Chiefs are in a suburban location with plenty of space, recreate the tailgating experience you have at Arrowhead, and then the Royals play downtown Kansas City, maybe parking is a little bit more of an issue, but like it's something people can do right after work. They can you have a thriving business district around it and restaurants, and you create a kind of a mini Wrigleyville kind of atmosphere. That might be the best case scenario in the long run. Like that actually would work out beautifully, but it means the Royals need to get a deal done probably in that Washington Square Park location, because, and I think now the opportunity is there for them to get a bit of a sweetheart deal from the city that wasn't there potentially before.
I would agree. I think that is like, does Missouri want to listen? The state of Missouri has lost the St. Louis Browns, the Kansas City A's, St. Louis Football Cardinals, St. Louis Rams, Sporting Kansas City, the Kansas City Scouts of the NHL, the Kansas City Kings, St. Louis Hawks, and now the Kansas City Chiefs. The Royals would be the 10th team in the, what I'll call 5, we're adding the MLS now, 5 major sports in America to leave the state of Missouri. 10th. And I can tell you the ones that I've covered: Sporting Kansas City, the Chiefs, and now the Royals, and the Chiefs and Royals in their renovations. It has not been a spectacular success in how they've handled things. They've got an opportunity to circle the wagons and say, let's get this done. What's it going to take? And I think what's healthiest for the region would be for one state to have one team and the other state to have the other. I think that is the best way to not put the burden on the taxpayers. Even the star bonds, it's a great mechanism for getting things going because it's just taxing new revenue, only new revenue. So the projects have to come up with something that generate the revenue. That's the idea behind it. This is by far the biggest bite they've ever taken off on what they're going to try to finance, and what I believe will be upwards of well over. I think in the end it'll go well over $4 billion, like for the Chiefs. Like if you're the Royals, you're talking about a couple of $1 billion plan. That's what it was 2 years ago on the vote. You're probably at $2.5 billion now, with the way things go up and what they're going to build. And what I hear is going to be a lot of infrastructure, no matter what it is. And you're going to need more infrastructure from wherever you land it. If you've got a state of Missouri, and whether it's Clay County or Jackson County that are eager to help you out, yes, you're going to get your best sweetheart deal right now on Missouri. And they need to be working that hard. Whoever is working on this should be working on nothing else. Nothing else. And it needs to get done. Because I'm going to tell you, the other thing that's going to come in is fan fatigue. They're going to be tired of hearing about it. And you're going to start to get like, well, you're never going to get around to it. And I'm not voting for anything. And I'm sick of hearing this crap. And then that's going to bleed over onto a baseball team that is, as we pointed out, seems to be doing just about everything right. And I don't think you want to tarnish that.
No, absolutely not. I mean, look, this shouldn't be a hard sell. You know what I mean? Like the Kansas City, the level of sporting fandom in Kansas City is among the highest of any metropolitan area in the country. All right. I mean, the Chiefs just got, like you said, a $4 billion stadium deal. And
stadium and practice facility.
Stadium, right. But the point is, like, there's $4 billion committed to this. And yes, maybe it's not going to come out of existing tax. Like, they say that now. We'll see what actually happens. But to me, what's so surprising is like the lack of grumbling that I have seen, lack of people being upset. Normally, when public dollars are being used for something like this, there's a lot more anger. And yes, the Chiefs are the Chiefs. This year, not
they're the Chiefs, but there's no tax being levied against people that's going to come directly from them. It's a user's tax, and a user's tax that comes only from.
If that worked, that's amazing. I think that would be very unusual in the history.
It is very unusual. There's only a handful of states that,
which is why I'm just saying I'm skeptical that it will work as perfectly as they say. That's my point. But
that's the entire Legends development. That is Sporting Park.
They
have had one failure, and that was I forget the name of the museum, which has now become the College Baseball Museum, that did not work off 135th. I forget what that museum was called, and it didn't work. But otherwise, it has been a giant.
If it's worked, then I think that's fantastic, and I don't know why it's not becoming more of a model around the country. Maybe because if you don't have to do it that way, owners will still prefer.
Well, one of the things, think about it. You have to have it has to be new revenue, so you can't just go and put it into something that's already built. You basically have to have lots of open land to build something that's brand new. That's part of the equation.
In this case, the team is coming from a different tax base, so you're stealing a tax base, from another municipality.
Yeah.
But the point I'm making basically is that, like, there is political will within the people of the Kansas City area to spend money for the Chiefs, obviously, but even the Royals, like they're not. This shouldn't be an uphill battle for the Royals to convince somebody to let them build a ballpark. And it has been very peculiar, the dichotomy between how well the team is being run right now on the baseball side of things, as well as, I can remember in recent memory, really, and just how strange this whole process with the stadium has been, and how it seems like they've like you just said, they've exhausted people and also exhausted their patience about building a ballpark. So yes, I think they really need to announce something sooner rather than later, and they have a great opportunity after this to get something done quickly.
And they have 3 competing locations. They have 2 different states, 3 different counties, 3 different cities competing right now. But at some point, I know over in North Kansas City, the Merriman family that owns that and manages all the businesses that are there now, which can be moved. But those are businesses, like, for them to maximize their revenues on that, those are businesses that want to sign 5-year leases. And right now they're like, no, I can't do that. Right. And so at some point they're going to be like, look, you're the boy who cried wolf. We've been holding off on what is our current strategy. And we're holding off on development plans that could be brought in that don't include a ballpark, that we could begin to develop this land in another way. They're holding off on it. They're not going to hold off forever. And when North Kansas City drops off, and then if Washington Square Park drops off and you're just negotiating with Kansas, like, good luck. Like, the key to the Chiefs were they went first, and they negotiated with both sides all the way to the finish line, and then they put it in front of the family and said, okay, pick the best one. And they said, okay, this is it. The Royals are going to lose the ability to have people competing for them if they don't get off their ass and get this done soon.
Yeah. I think, I mean, you have to think that they know this, but my experience with the Royals on the baseball side of operations for the last 4 years says just because something seems to be incredibly obvious does not mean that the Royals will necessarily make the right decision or make the obvious move. Let's hope that they make the obvious move here, because the obvious move here is get a deal done, because I don't want to say any deal, but most deals are going to be better than no deal at all.
Yeah, there's a lot of incentive. There's a lot of reason to get it done soon. So let's hope they can get it done. Listen, if you enjoy the Kaufman Corner podcast, support our great sponsors like Gann Asphalt and Concrete. If you own or manage a business, they've been solving parking lot problems since 1994. Things as simple as striping, concrete bumpers, signage. That cuts down on liability. You don't need bumper cars going out in your parking lot. Focus on your business. Let Gann focus on your parking lot. One contractor, all things parking lot. Find them at GannAsphalt.com. Northland Injury Law, Kansas City's best for 40 years. Voted Casey's #1 accident lawyer. Google 5-star rated. If you've been hurt in an accident at work, on the roads, and you got a case, text HURT to 22222 or call 816-400-HURT. And our friends at Whataburger. Check out that Bacon Wrangler double 2 large beef patties, American Monterey Jack cheese, bacon, fried onion strings, pickles, and Chipotle aioli. They're open 24 hours a day. Serving breakfast 11 p to 11 a. They are a lifesaver. Late night, don't forget to get over to your friends at Whataburger. They have you covered. Proud sponsor of the Kaufman Corner podcast. For the good doctor, Dr. Rany Jazayerli, I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Kaufman Corner podcast.